Pallavi, all yours. I'll make you the host.
Thank you, Sunilji. Thank you, Prakashji, for such an wonderful, awesome session. And Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening to everyone. Welcome to Daily Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Radhe Radhe, Nitinji, over to you.
Radhe Radhe, thank you, Pallavi. Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening, everyone. Very warm welcome to today's edition of Daily Wisdom. And thank you, Prakashji, Sunil for a wonderful session, like always. So let's get started. So today, we will continue on our journey. We'll have three segments. So because we have spiritual cash-ups segment, we will do away with our first segment, which is soul soup segment, and few more tweaks we are doing so that we'll pick up 3 hands towards the beginning and 3 hands towards our session as well, so that we can finish our session on time. Okay, we're going to challenge ourselves to do that because that's one of the things we want to work towards. Swamiji also ends stuff on time, and we'll try to do that. But we'll get that started and see how that goes. I would request our co-host to keep a track of people who don't get a chance so that we can rotate it so that it's load balanced, right? That's something we could try. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. We will get started with our opening prayers, and then we get into the session itself. Give me a sec. Wait. Okay, we'll get started with our opening prayers. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Radhe Radhe. So let's get started. I'm going to recite the shloka. We'll pick up about 3 hands. Faces will be preferred over names. If there's somebody from yesterday, like I think Pragiji was there, we'll give them preference, and let's get started. Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma Vijetatma Jitendriya Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kurvannapi na lipyate. Let's take a few hands. Pratyusha, I see.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Pratyusha ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kurvannapi na lipyate. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Pratyusha.
Pratyusha. Pragiji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, thank you.
We have somebody with, maybe we can put.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out. Someone is
No worries.
unmuted.
Let's move on. Yes, Pragiji.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Yoga Yukto Vishuddh Atma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kurvannapi na lipyate.
Thank you, Pragiji. Let's take one
Thank
more.
you.
Radhe Radhe, Riya ji, please go ahead.
Riyaji.
Radhe Radhe. Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriyaha Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Kurvannapi na lipyate.
Very
Radhe
nice.
Radhe.
Radhe, thank you. Okay, Chandru is there. Maybe one more hand will take last one.
Last but not the least, Chandruji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe.
Thank you. Yoga Yukto Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Chitindriya Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma kurvanapi na lipyate.
Nice, thank you, Chandruji.
Thank you.
I encourage everybody to do recitations as we are doing that. It's very auspicious, and we spend a considerable amount on a shloka, so gives us ample opportunity to keep on reciting it. So let's move on. In this shloka, Lord Krishna is saying, by the way, today we set a record for taking all the names without faces. Okay, it has never happened before. So, Karm yogis who are of purified intellect and who control the mind and senses see the soul of all souls in every living being. Though performing all kind of actions, they are never entangled. All right, so let's move on. Okay, Balmukund class. Now let's get started. Where is God? Okay, let's tackle that question. Once a kid was asked in a class, right? Balmukund is our class over the weekend, that where is Bhagavan, God? Where is Bhagavan? So first kid, he said he's in Radha Krishna temple, right? Let's understand the way we look at it. Bhagavan is in Radha Krishna temple. Because that's where they've seen it. Parents probably bring them, say, okay, let's go meet God, right? Our weekly date with God. And then the second kid, he said he's in the puja room in my house. Okay, that's where they've seen it as well. That's where God is. So pretty apparent answer. The third one, he said he's in the heart of each of us. He was a pretty advanced kid, I looks like, right? Because this concept, we even adults don't know that. Adults know that he's residing within everyone. Yesterday we were talking about the concept of Paramhans, right? Which who sees divinity in everybody, and even a Hans for that matter, who would see divinity, the good in others, acknowledging that there's divinity in everyone. So this knowing this fact that he resides in heart of everybody is also a big deal, right? So that was the answer. I think the fourth one was pretty interesting. He said he's in the bathroom of our house, and there's a reason for that. Why? Because teachers say, why would you say that? That's because every morning dad wakes up and he says, when it is occupied, hey Bhagwan, when will you come out, right? So that happens. It reminds me of Chacha Chaudhary also. His wife's name was Bhagyavan. He used to call that, right? Like sounded like Bhagwan. So the point here is we all have our own perception around where God is, right? And even when we do our weekly devotion or festival-based devotion, we think that is when we do our date with God, and then other places God doesn't reside. So think about it, right? When we go to temple, we harbor all those sentiments, and when we get out of the temple, we think, okay, now nobody's watching us. But the fact of the matter is that God is always with us. Now, if you truly think about this concept, if he's residing in our heart and he's seated within us, then by de facto our body also becomes a temple. And if our body becomes a temple, right, what would you like to put in your temple? Right? The people who resort to intoxicants and stuff like that, if they can't do it in temple, how can you do it with your body? So you can take that imagination a lot, further to see what would you like to do with your body, right? And for that matter, your thoughts, you're taking it to another level, right? What are you going to put inside? Here we have two stomachs anyways. One is this, and one is that gets satiated temporarily with food. So if you truly think where is God, and you believe that it resides everywhere, then it's a paradigm shift in the way we would operate, because that feeling should drive a lot of that stuff, right? Now, scripturally, let's employ scriptural lens to it as well, right? Which is called Shastra Chakshu. What do they say? A lot of things they say, but I've just picked up a couple of them. One is a statement, Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam. This whole world is a veritable form of God. So basically, if you think about it, this whole world is a temple. It's a playground or a temple of God itself, nothing different from that. So if that is the case, we cannot find any imperfection in this world. If this whole world is a veritable form of God, including his energy Maya, you can't find faults with that there's a problem in the world, or Ghor Kali Yuga has come, or it is at a macro level, everything is happening for a perfect reason. Like every snowflake is falling at the right place. Everything is happening for a perfect reason. That is how the world is. And that is the scriptural perspective. And this is the perspective that saints have, that they not develop, but they harbor that as well. Because end of the day, this whole world is a temple of God, nothing else. Everything is happening perfectly. And everybody is perfectly situated where they need to be as well. We can't say, why you pity this guy, why people is like this. Everybody is perfectly situated where they need to be. So that means we need to have acceptance around it, because we are all on a journey. I think it happened with Buddha, right? Somebody was talking to him or abusing him, and he had absolutely no reaction to it at all, right? And so this person has asked him that, what makes you the way you are? Right? He was surprised, and this guy is not even moving at all. So he said, 50 lifetimes back, I was like you. So the point here is, we all are on a journey, and everybody's perfectly situated where they need to be. And only when they learn their current lessons will they graduate to the next level. And it is quite possible somebody's, might be in elementary on their trajectory when it comes to their spirituality, and tomorrow they might be postdoc. And on the other hand, somebody might be in high school, and they may continue there for a long time. So we cannot say that somebody is ahead, behind. End of the day, we are all on sailing in the same boat, because we are all Maya Dhin. Until the journey is complete, you cannot say somebody is far ahead, this, that, right? Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So in that sense, it's not up to us to evaluate and say they are spiritually behind, I'm ahead. No, leave it to God and Guru, because we don't know. And if that causes some kind of a pride, that's a sure short sign for a downfall. So Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Basically, God is present everywhere. This whole world is a veritable form of God. And also in Ramayana, right? Like it says, Siya Ram Mai Sab Jag Jani. Right? If you asked Hanuman, he said, I see Sita Ram everywhere. It's a big deal. And that is the perspective of saints as well. So when we spoke about those things, right, what we spoke about Vishuddhatma, when you are a Vishuddhatma, this is the perspective you develop at that point. And then in addition to Vishuddhatma, we spoke about this concept, right? There are three things. Vishuddhatma, and then the second one is Vijitatma. Vijitatma, basically, when you are at that stage, that is, you would experience God and divinity everywhere. Right? So this is how this process goes. Now let's move on and talk about this thing, right? Now our Vedas say that there are two birds in a tree. Okay. Sayujya Sakha Dvai. Two birds on a tree. What are those two birds? Let's understand that. It's chosen to be a parrot. Fair enough. Let's see. One word, bird, and the second bird. So the way our scriptures explain is that one is the supreme soul and other one is the individual soul. What is going on? The individual soul, if you think about it, it has its back towards him and enjoying the fruit on the tree, while the other bird is simply watching without interference. What is its job function? I'm going to simply be the witness, nothing else. Now, the birds are metaphorical representation of soul and the supreme soul as such, right? As per our scriptures. But the key thing to note here is that one, the back is turned towards, it's like turned the back towards the supreme soul. And second, the bird is enjoying the fruit for its own pleasure. And it has forgotten that the supreme soul is the supreme enjoyer. Because one is soul, other one is a super soul. Now, the supreme soul, if you look at it, it's simply watching it. Now you say, what kind of a job it is? Why simply watch? Do something, right? I mean, is it fun just watching something? So do something like what? So this bird can inquire or stake a claim that do something for me, grace me, or something like that. So this bird is saying basically, I'm willing to. Are you asking for it or not? First of all, you have turned your back towards me. So what is the basis for you to ask that, right? So the spirituality is all about correcting this equation. Now it's like this. Now you just need to turn like this. So when you turn like this, then now we are talking, right? The birds are talking. There's a reason for the birds to talk. I'll tell you about, even from a grace standpoint, let me build on this part a little bit because it's a pretty interesting concept. I'll give you another analogy for that. Okay. So basically this is what we spoke about, right? This is how their individual soul and the supreme soul are. And the supreme soul is no other than Kshirodakshay Vishnu. Okay. Quick hierarchy check. Param Purush is Krishna, and then his extension is Mahavishnu, right? And then or Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and through him comes the Kshirodakshai Vishnu. And Kshirodakshai Vishnu permeates everything. And this is what the Supreme Soul is. And its job function is simply keep on noting your karma. So what is the karma the Supreme Soul does? It notes down your karma across all the lifetimes. So it has a big database of Hadoop, big database. I don't know how many terabytes it will run into. And what does it have in that store? It has your sankalpa. Sankalpa is every thought of every moment of every lifetime across every lifetime, basically of entire ever since we have been there. Every sankalp is noted down, even every small thought that you have had, that database is, and then based on that, that database is processed, and accordingly the results, prarabdh, all that algorithm is done. Okay, only he has that thing part of it, right? So its job is simply to keep on logging the data and then giving the results, in due course of time. So what we said was the individual soul has its back towards it. So what is how does this situation, how do we correct this situation, right? This is where the problem is, because we have our back turned. So this needs to be corrected, something like this, right? Now, Supreme Soul is a friend of the soul and is watching while the soul has its back to him. What needs to happen is something like this, it needs to move and start facing it. And spirituality is all about enabling us to turn our back, that long forgotten relationship that we had with God, where we are just busy enjoying the fruit and having our back towards the God, we just turn, and turn and start facing God. So, which is called from being Vimukh to becoming Sanmukh. Okay, that is what spirituality is all about. And then since when we have been Vimukh to God, जब से तब भी नहीं था. We have been anadikal vimukh. It's not like we were facing God and then turned away. We were always like that. We always, I think, again, this becomes a philosophical question. I'm going to get into that. But we always were looking at enjoying the fruit. Okay, ever since there was not even, jab se tab bhi nahi tha. No conception of time. Yes, Sandhya, you had a question?
Yeah, I know I've asked this earlier, but to start with, we were pure, right?
No, we'll not get into that. To start with, ever since we have been there, right? जब से तब भी नहीं था, we have always been vimukh to God. We always were interested in enjoying the fruit without even questioning where we have come from. Okay, so it's not like were pure and one day we became impure. If
I'm
that
not
was the
saying that,
case,
but the starting state, what was there in the mind? The mind must have been empty, right? Like it,
ask God
nothing.
when you become God realized. Okay, or ask Swamiji this question. I have dabbled with this
I've
question
asked him.
for 3 years. Finally, it kind of started making sense. Okay, we can get into that philosophical discussion. But Anadikal, we have been Bahirmukh, facing Maya and just facing, this is how our state has always been. Some of us, like have, turned our back and realized God. And some of us, Jivatmas, have always been with God. So it's just giving us an opportunity to be like them, or to be like the son to whom he would like to give his inheritance to. And that is where we are trying to be like Nitya Siddh, or we are trying to be Sadhan Siddh. That will serve the purpose of our existence. Okay, so it's a deep philosophical question, but just take it for now. You are in water, you are in deep water. Okay, take the umbrella and or figure out that life jacket or lifeboat and try to get out of it without questioning why did I get in water to begin with. Okay, was it I was in the boat and then I fell down into the water, or that's a pretty deep question around it. We were always in water for some reason, and some of us were always with a life jacket along with God. Why, we can ask God when we reach there, but this has how been the case. Yes, Abaji, you wanted to thicken the plot by asking something even more profound?
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. Ambaji, please go ahead.
Yes, Ram.
Radhe Radhe. Sorry, I do want to thicken the plot just a little bit. Okay, so I understand you're in a situation sometimes because God wants you there, right? But sometimes you have people there with you. Is it that God wants you to maybe also teach them something or someone who's not God realized or not even close to being realized, right? Not even going down that path. Should you go down that path or just let them continue on their journey? Because I always wonder, you run into people, into
Got it.
situations, right?
Everybody's perfectly situated. They will also have their own lessons. We need to focus on our lessons without worrying about their, because that will happen in due course of time, or it might already be happening. That's what I tell even in Seva world, right? When people play on your nerves and test you, I tell you, see, you're testing me, so it's obligatory on me to test you as well, okay? So that the equation is correctly set up. But yes, even they are being tested, right? In a lot of ways, maybe on tolerance, patience around it. So we need to focus on our test. And in the process, I'm sure their tests are also getting created. Those challenges that they have will keep on repeating until they learn those lessons. So everybody's perfectly situated where they need to be. So
So we shouldn't respond back with maybe, okay, like if you're in such and such situation, maybe you should react this way, be patient, rather than letting them react, right? Like if you have an opportunity to educate someone, should you, or should
sure,
you just let
sure.
it be?
If you think you have that, sphere of influence where somebody is willing to listen to you, solicited or unsolicited, go for it. But the point is, we can't change somebody, just by our talks. We can change somebody by our actions, where they may get inspired to see, hey, something is working for them, so let me follow them. But by talks, if we could talk somebody into it, then one lecture of a saint would transform us, right? Completely transform us. It doesn't work so easily though. But we'll talk about these things. We'll take some real life scenarios when we pick up our next segment, right? Thursdays, we are going to pick up case studies. We are going to have in-depth discussion around some of these tricky situations that we all get stuck in, with different scenarios that play out in our lives, day-to-day lives. We'll talk more about that. But let's understand, the soul turns to God, its miseries will cease to be. Our miseries are because right now our back is turned towards the God. And then turning around basically means bringing the awareness of God, thinking He's with me, expanding our consciousness and learning to live with that. And that is essentially what Karam yogis do. With purified intellect, they see God situated on living beings, behave respectfully towards everyone. Yesterday, the question came up, okay, if we see divinity in everything, does that mean we need to do everybody's arati? That was not the question. By the way, that question came from, okay, did I say arati? Okay. So yeah, we don't have to do everybody's arti. That doesn't mean that. You still have to operate effectively with your buddhi. All that means is don't harbor resentment. Understand there's divinity in everybody. Because their sanskars and mind-body complex, they are acting the way they are because even they don't know what they are doing. It's all born out of ignorance, and we are all operating at varying levels of ignorance, nothing more than that. So focus on the bad part of it, not see bad in others, right? Okay, you can take a resolve that what this person is doing, I'll not do it with anybody. Or I need to refrain from this kind of a behavior that can hurt me, as opposed to thinking that person is bad. Because what purpose will it serve at the end of the day, right? Even in meetings, in office, corporate lives, they say focus on the issues, not on personalities or people. They're also telling you, they're not going to the divinity level, but essentially telling you focus on the issues. That will keep the thought process objective, as opposed to getting into people and opinionated and stereotyping things in your head. Yes, Pallaviji, you wanted to add something?
Nitinji, I want to ask the question that is in the chat. The question is from Priyaji. Are all lessons learned in the same birth, or some remain until the next birth?
We'll talk about it. In tomorrow's session, we'll pick it up, right? So all lessons, you think how many lessons, even if you have to clear a material entrance exam, let's say you are preparing for IAS or engineering or medical, you know how vast that study is and what levels it can go to, and how much hard work it takes. And so here you are looking at cracking God's entrance, right? I don't know how many lessons we need to do, how much conditioning. So really depends on how many lessons are needed for us to perfect our surrender. It could vary, or it could be, in fact, if you go by Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is saying Bahu Janmante. He has used the word multiple lifetimes. It takes people to perfect that, right? But we don't know who can pick up speed and take a rocket as opposed to taking an elevator or crawling. So it really depends on the pace that we take. Right? It could be probably within this lifetime, 5 years, 2 years, tomorrow. I don't know, right? And nobody knows other than God and Guru how far we have progressed in getting closer to the state of surrender. But we'll talk about this stuff as well, because the way lessons are orchestrated, there is a method to that madness as well, right? Now, the key is Karma Yoga, when you perfect, the actions are not motivated by the desire for self-enjoyment. Knowledge is progressively clarified. As you get, see, as your layers of ignorance start getting removed, your true nature of soul starts shining forth, the knowledge will automatically start manifesting. So God says, see, you've got your vessel like this. My grace is falling. But the problem is that the bucket is upside down. Okay. Bucket is upside down. We need to correct that. That is from Vimukh to Sanmukh. Now, the problem is you may correct the bucket, but at the same time, the bucket may be curdled, right? So if you put milk in it and the bucket is dirty, then it may curdle, the milk will curdle, right? So that part, the cleaning of Antakaran is needed as well. And then the bucket may have perforations or leakage. So all that has to be fixed as part of spirituality, not only correcting the direction, but cleaning it up and filling the holes, all those leakages and defects that we have along the way as well. And that will help us, enable us to not only draw the grace, but also holding it and utilizing it for us as well. So we say, God, you grace us. God says, first you utilize the grace that I've given you, and then you'll automatically gain eligibility for more grace. That is how the process will go. Now, this is how the progressive path of Karma Yoga would pan out. How would it pan out? Basically, let's look at it. So first we start with uncontrolled senses, mind, and intellect. It is completely uncontrolled, right? Our horses, which is our senses, which are driving us to all the directions. Kathopanishad, we have gone through this example, chariot example, 5 horses are senses. Mind is following the senses and intellect is kind of, okay, whatever Mr. Mind you tell, I'll follow you. So the charioteer is not taking a control, reins are following the horses, and the soul, which is the passenger, is fast asleep. So it has no clue about where the chariot is being taken. Why? Because it is being run at the whims and fancies of the senses alone. So this is uncontrolled senses, mind, and intellect, which is mundane intellect, mundane way of living that the majority of the world is doing already, right? Then what happens? You have some aha moments, spiritual spark and stuff like that. And then you understand deeper principle, you come across Bhagavad Gita, or you attend the sessions, or you get the grace of God, somehow something clicks and you start practicing Karma Yoga. When you start practicing Karma Yoga, you understand that desires, they start getting eliminated. The material desires, they start getting eliminated. Now you start aligning to a higher purpose. You start building that consciousness of God. You're dovetailing your desires towards something much more purposeful and meaningful. And then as a result of that, your senses, mind, and intellect, they start coming under control. Why they have started coming under control? Because with the practice of Karma Yoga, they have started getting cleansed. So the impurities will start winning away. And when the impurities will start going away, automatically you'll realize that you'll see at your senses, mind, they will start cooperating much more as opposed to completely being out of control. It is a natural symptom of it. In fact, it is one of the key yardstick for us to know, are we progressing or are we regressing? Because it will start cooperating. You'll not be, it's not like that agitated mind throughout that you have no control over, and throughout the day you feel that restlessness and agitation around anything and everything that your mind dishes out to you. You'll start getting better at that. And finally, the perfected state that we talk about is you engage in more and more devotional service now, because when you start relishing the higher ras or the mellow, it may start off as a need to begin with, then it'll become a greed for you. Okay, because you relish it, and we are seeking happiness, and who can reject happiness? And you're automatically getting joy, peace, bliss, and control over your mind, senses, and better control over your personal, professional, and all the lives, all walks of life. You will not want to let go of that thing, right? Only an insane person would do that. Nobody can do that. So this is how the process will unfold. And finally, as you continue on this journey, you will realize knowledge from within. It starts getting revealed from within. And that is what, if you look at the saints, they have not studied scriptures and stuff like that. The knowledge starts getting revealed from within, because our soul is already pure. And when you remove the layers of ignorance, knowledge is already there. Our scientists, who used to be the scientists in Sanatan Dharam, the big rishis, what did they have? Test tubes and all those big laboratories to carry out experiments and figure out the truths, like Bhugol, that Earth is round, which Galileo Copernicus, long debate ensued and stuff like that. No, I mean, they would simply sit and download that information from above, right? Because it will get revealed from within. So that is the power of this knowledge. Every knowledge is there within. Your layers of ignorance, as they will start getting peeled away, knowledge will start manifesting from within. And there will be things, I'm sure, for some of you on this path, or all of you, when you start on this path and you start seeking, first of all, you start getting answers, okay, from all the quarters. It's almost like the universe has started conspiring to give you answers. But more importantly, there will be things that you are struggling with, and one day you will wake up and you'll say, you know what, it kind of makes sense. I don't need to know it from anybody. So that realized knowledge, where is it coming from? This is a realized knowledge. God starts feeding that to you from within, and your questions will all quieten. And now you will be, it's like you're on that path, on the highway at that point. So that realized knowledge, one is the theoretical knowledge, other is the realized knowledge. Realized knowledge, or the conviction, comes from the fact that you have lived that truth somehow. God has activated that from within. And that is another symptom, or another reaffirmation, or that your spiritual journey is actually leading to the clinic, right? Which is in turn activating that knowledge, making it that knowledge a wisdom or a realized knowledge from within. That is the trick God is doing from within as well, right? And one of the symptoms for that is not having a sense of doership. As you progress on this path, right, it says vidya dadati vinayam. Sanskrit says that. So when you gain more knowledge, it will start bringing in humility, because this sense that I'm not the doer, God is the one who's the source of energy for me, for everything. So that sense of doership, you will start relinquishing as well, and more humility will ensue. That is the de facto, or the natural consequence of a progress on the path of spirituality. Pride will start diminishing, humility will start increasing, because you start understanding you are not the doer at all. It's somebody, a divine invisible hand within you, which is actually energizing you to accomplish even commendable feats, right? So that sense of doership will start getting relinquished as well, which would be a good segue to the topic of our PRS today. Not PRS, the spiritual cash up segment. It is a good segue. Any question from anyone before we transition over to the next segment? Because it will be a build up on, I think, something related to the sense of doership aspect of it. Maybe one question we can take and then transition over to the next segment. Pin drop silence, which is good. So all yours, Cash, then for the next. Yes, Ajit ji. All right.
Radhe Radhe. Ajit ji, please go ahead.
See, we have a next segment coming up. So reserve your question. I'm sure you'll have more. Yes, Ajit ji, please go ahead.
Nitin ji, what is the importance of the temple in the spiritual journey? The reason being that everywhere God is there.
True.
Why should we go to Jagannath only, Jagannath Puri?
Fair question. Yeah, temple is
get the
everywhere.
blessing. Yeah, Radhe Radhe.
Like this, that those places, they help you enable those sentiments. Now, air is everywhere. Why do you need a fan? Right? Now, air is everywhere. Why do you need a fan? It's like it can actually channelize that air and give you a feel at that point, right? The same thing with temples as well. Those places help you build that sentiment. God is there. I mean, everywhere God is there. There's no place where God is not. But those places where you have a focused, or those collective vibes are there, people come with those sentiments that help you enable that sentiment even better, or channelize that sentiment, or build those bhavs easily. You go to a casino, your mind will be agitated. You go to a bar, your mind will be all over. You go to a temple, Gurudwara, any place which is calm, because those vibes are there, it helps you focus your mind more. That's all. It's just a better enabler, nothing more than that. It's an example of air and fan, I would say. Right? Air is everywhere. You need a fan to experience it. Yeah. Okay. So over to, yeah. Thank you, Ajit ji. Great question. Over to you, Cash, for the next segment then.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. Thank you, Pallavi ji. Thanks, Nitin ji. You can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So, welcome to today's segment of Cash Up. So here's a company that was in the news a couple of weeks ago. It had implemented an AI chatbot as part of its website customer service, right? And it so happened that the chatbot ended up providing some misleading information to one of the customers who ended up suing the company. So the question is, in this case, when the customer has suffered losses because of this, who is responsible for that loss? Is it the company that implemented the chatbot, or is it the chatbot that went and got wrong information? So that brings us to today's topic, which is the truer doer. This is again from the chapter, The Grace of God, and we continue with that journey in episode 2. But before we get into it, let's do a quick recap and ruminate and be like one of Krishna's cows. So last time we talked about grace in the sense of why do we do bhakti to receive more bhakti? So we said we already have some amount of grace. We already have that in our bank account. And we said if we utilize that and we make some self-effort, then we can get some more bhakti added to the stash we already had. Once we get that more of that grace, we continue to put in more self-effort, and our stash of bhakti increases. And this cycle continues. We get more grace, we put more effort, we get more bhakti. And that process, as long as we keep putting in the self-effort, this keeps growing and growing. And so the concept in a nutshell that we talked about last week was recognizing grace. So that means we identify all our existing graces, and then we show gratitude by utilizing them to attract more grace. And we said that would give us a lot of grace, gratitude, and growth in our spiritual journey. So that was kind of where we left it off last time. We established self-effort is absolutely necessary, even though we have the grace. So getting into today's topic, Maharajji opens up with a loaded statement. So he says, the scriptures declare that all living beings are like mechanical instruments operated by God. And it is He who directs us, and if we act according to His directions. So here's a couple of mechanical instruments, right? A saw in the hands of a carpenter, a knife in the hands of a chef. So are we really like these inanimate mechanical instruments, and do we just follow whatever the operator is asking us to do? Now Maharajji gives us a warning, right? He says, if this statement is improperly understood, it can result in bringing about a lot of ruin. On the other hand, if you understand it correctly, then it can be the catalyst for a fantastic spiritual progress. So this is something akin to an architect who's drafting the blueprint of a building, right? Once he's done drafting it, he gives it in the hands of the builder. Now, if the builder misinterprets the blueprint, doesn't understand it correctly, he can end up with a building like this, pretty much, that looks like a ruin. But if he's interpreting it correctly, if he's understood it correctly, executing it correctly, then he can be on the path to creating something very beautiful. So next, Maharajji asks or poses a series of thoughts on who is the true operator. So we know that the Supreme Lord is omniscient, all-knowing. And if that is the case, and if He's our director, that is the doer of all our actions, then how is it possible that we perform actions out of ignorance? How is it that we make mistakes or take the wrong path or do the wrong things if He's supposed to be all-knowing and He knows what He's doing? And if God is the doer, why do we experience ourselves as doers and suffer the subsequent unhappiness arising out of those actions? So we make mistakes, we get undesirable outcomes, and that ends up frustrating us. But if we haven't been the ones to do those things, why are we getting these negative outcomes? If God is the doer of our every action, then He should suffer the consequences of these actions or pardon Himself. Why is Mr. Shirodakshai Vishnu sitting there noting down actions and consequences for us? So the question is, who is the truer doer? Is it God or is it us? And as is our habit, let's leave the chapter here and dip into the real world for some examples. So he said, we're mechanical instruments in the hands of God, right? So in these following examples, let's see who's the truer doer. So here's a construction employee. He's operating this excavator. He pulls some levers to move that claw around. Here's a puppeteer that's pulling some strings to make this puppet do his thing. This is the carpenter we just saw, no pun intended. And then this is the chef that's chopping some tomatoes with his knife, right? So the question is, are these mechanical things the real doers, or is it the people operating them behind the scenes? Now we find a commonality between all of these tools, right? They are just that, they are tools. They don't have any thinking or performing capability, and they only move around and do the things they do because they have operators operating them. So we established that at a minimum, you have to have some thinking or performing capability, right? So moving on, let's extrapolate that further. Is thinking or performing capability the only requirement? What about artificial intellect? So we'll go back to the example we saw in the beginning on the title slide, right? So this is a real world case that happened just a few weeks ago. So this company, again, implemented this AI chatbot on its website. The chatbot did not align with company policy and gave wrong information to the customer. The customer filed a lawsuit in a small claims court. And what do we think the court's ruling was? Is it the chatbot's fault, or is it the fault of the company? Obviously, the court held the company responsible. And why is that? Because the chatbot is a machine learning program. It doesn't have a free will to go do what it likes, right? So we're saying, yes, you need thinking capability, performing capability. Even if you give an entity that artificial thinking capability, that's not enough because they don't have the free will. So let's dive deeper into that concept of free will and how it plays into doership. So consider this set of parents. They're very caring. They have a good value system, and they have done their best to impart their child with that knowledge of how to be a good citizen. Now, let's say, we know everyone has a free will, right? So this teenage child can exercise her free will in different ways. If she keeps those good values in mind and acts in accordance to what she's been taught, right? She'll end up being on the right side of those good values. And then she'll be a good student, be an asset to the community. And what happens then? A lot of the times when we see good children, a lot of times parents are given the credit. What a good job they've done with raising that child, right? On the other hand, if this child is not using free will correctly or in accordance to what she's been taught, she's in for some very negative outcomes. She could be rebellious, get in trouble, but then what happens? Let's say this child commits a misdemeanor. It's not the parents that are going to be charged. Who's going to be held responsible? The teenager, right? So if we extrapolate that to the spiritual realm, God has imparted his knowledge through gurus and scriptures. We have the free will to either act in accordance with that, or we can choose another way. Similar to this, if we act in accordance with what the teachings are, scriptural teachings, gurus' teachings, we may not always get the outcome we want, but we have the mindset to accept whatever result or outcomes we get, that prasad buddhi. And we have the peace of mind knowing we did act in accordance with what we've been taught. But we have another choice to go against that will. And then what happens? We either get good outcomes or we don't. And when we don't get good outcomes, we end up feeling unhappy and frustrated. And then we want to hold God responsible. So what are we establishing here? We're saying doership depends on the choices we make. There's no clear path to say who's the doer. So that brings me to the analogy of the river diversion dam. What is that? A diversion dam is a dam that diverts all or a portion of a flow of a river from its natural course. So in this picture, this is how the natural river was coursing along. And This is a man-made dam that is diverting water into this man-made canal, right? So it's diverting the flow of the river. So if you think about it from divine will perspective, let's say this was the original flow of God's will, right? We created some kind of a diversion dam in the course of that free will. And then because of the choices we made, we changed the course of that will to make it flow to our will based on applying our own mind, senses, intellect. Now that may give a completely different outcome from what we would have got if we stayed on course with the will of God. What is this diversion dam we're building that diverts or obstructs that natural flow? It could be ego, it could be pride, it could be selfish desires, self-interest. Maybe we don't have the divine knowledge, so we don't know what God wants, how God wants us to act. Maybe we have the divine knowledge, but we don't have the ability to act in accordance with that. And that ends up giving us this false sense of doership, thinking I'm doing this. And then if we go back to our very definition of God and his omniscience, who knows better than him what's good for us, right? So this brings me to Krishna's flute, which is, this was like a spiritual aha moment for me a couple years ago. And those I know personally I've shared with you guys, but it may not show on my face, but my heart is doing gymnast leaps right now because I'm getting to share this with all of you. So a couple of years ago, I got this book for my son. This is from a publication called Amar Chitrakatha, and they do graphic novels for children. They're great for grown-ups too. I love reading them. So this was a story of Krishna, right? All his life and leelas. And amongst those colorful pages, there's a precious pearl of wisdom somewhere in there. And inspiration can come from anywhere, right? So I'll read you part of it. This is the lure of the flute. When Krishna plays the flute, all of creation holds its breath and stops to listen. The music of his flute is said to have been so beautiful that the Yamuna carried lotuses up to his feet, and all the gopis would leave their tasks and be completely engrossed in its music. Once, an enthralled gopi asked the flute, "How do you inspire such love and joy in all who hear your song?" "I don't," the flute replied. "I'm just a plain piece of bamboo, hollow inside. When Krishna whispers again and again, 'Empty yourself, and I will sing through you,' I simply obey him." This bears repeating because this is so profound. Krishna whispers, "Empty yourself, and I will sing through you." Sorry, I'm getting carried away. So Krishna's flute, what it's trying to say is, let your will be my will. How can we make Krishna the truer doer, right? Let's imagine ourselves as Krishna's flute. But given we're works in progress, let's say his music isn't flowing through us today. So let's run a diagnostic and do an X-ray on ourselves. So in the X-ray, what we're finding is we have an obstruction right here. And that's why the music isn't flowing through. And what is that obstruction? It's what we just talked about. It's the misaligned free will. It could be the ego, the pride. But once you clear the obstruction, something will start to happen. So when we get rid of that pride, ego, misaligned will, now Krishna's music can flow through us. All right, moving on. So applied knowledge is power, we always say, right? So our question was, who is the truer doer? And the answer is, it depends. So Swamiji says, those that are under the grip of the unforgiving ego that makes them feel like they are the doers, and those that harbor personal desires independent of the will of God. In this state, God does not inspire their actions. He gives them the power to act, notes their karmas, and gives the fruit at the appropriate time. But there are those that are free from the pride of doership. and they make God's desire their own desire. In this state, the soul becomes the non-doer, and God becomes the director for that surrendered soul. So we always say practice makes progress. Remember this dam, the diversion dam? So as part of practice for this week, why don't we try to convert this dam into this dam, which is a daily affirmation mantra. Every morning, this is what I try to do. I just tell God and Guru, let the right intentions, thoughts, words, and actions flow through me. Make me your instrument. Let me be Krishna's flute. Let your will be my will. Put it in however, whatever kind of words you want, but that's the sentiment. And I will leave you with one thought. Pride and ego make our intellect unsure, align to God's will, and let him be the door. That concludes the segment for today. Radhe Radhe.
Awesome presentation, Cash. I think the flute example could not have been, any better analogy for that. You just made hit the right point with that one obstruction. That pretty much summarizes everything. And the Krishna's music that plays once you remove that obstruction. Loved it. In fact, today I came across another quote which says that God's work done in God's way will never lack God's supply. Okay, so I just loved it. You made the points and very nicely explained. I think this doership concept, I mean, it was phenomenal the way you did about that. Now let's open it up. I think I see a couple of hands. Maybe any questions or anything. So let's hear from some of the participants, but truly very well done and thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, Monica ji, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Radhe Radhe, Monica ji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Radhe Radhe, everyone. So much grace, my God. When I'm with satsangis, I always feel that in this Cash. I mean, Nitin ji, we were talking today, right? Ye kuch aur hi hai. I want to show something because, okay, affirmations, right? 1 second. Do you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a flute here? This is like my office table, and this is like right here in front of me. And this Cash asked me once that, which is your favorite shloka? And she actually made this bookmark and gave it to me. So this is like a reminder for me every single day. So this flute was gifted to me by someone who went to Mathura. And after 2 days, Cash shared that to become Krishna's flute quote with me too. And since then, that has been my focus. At times you feel, I'm sorry, but thank you for stopping that flute music on time, Cash. I mean, this is amazing because at times you just, need one liner or you need maybe just one word, right? I don't know. I'm actually not getting the amount of words, but then this flute analogy, right? This has worked for me so well that has been my focus. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Monica ji, for your nice comments, generous comments. But yeah, it was truly overwhelming. That presentation was pretty good. Yes, Shri Ramya, you wanted to say something real quick? See,
Radhe
10
Radhe.
is our target today, so we need to have a quick spiritual or devotional segment as well. So maybe one more hand. Yes.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe. I mean, I felt that today Cash ji, she seemed like a saint wherein the knowledge was already downloaded in her heart and she presented. There was no way that I could have comprehended this examples or come across this anywhere. The AI thing, is the AI the doer or the one who trained the model is the doer? That really struck me. I mean, it was truly amazing, beyond words. I'm not getting words to say also. So thank you.
We can understand your feelings. It's pretty palpable. Yes. Damn daily affirmation mantra. Hopefully we can subscribe to that. But yeah, I think the points were really clearly made and through very beautiful analogies. All right. Maybe one more hand we can take. You can put in the feedback tracker if you have any comments around that or anything. Tomorrow, by the way, we are going to do the case study. So I look see everybody in the session. It's not going to be a regular quiz session. It's going to be a case study based. So look out for that session. We'll pick up something very, very relevant and something interesting that we see in day-to-day lives, right? And practical scenarios part of that. Maybe one more hand we can take and then
Yes.
we
I have posted feedback tracker link also in the chat. And the chat is enabled for everyone to share their comments and feedback and appreciation for Kashji's presentation. I'll take Tanmayji's hand. Radhe Radhe, Tanmayji, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, so I just want to share a viewpoint on this today's topic. So we know that in Gita, Lord Krishna said that I am like a bead strung on a thread. And if we look at that, every time we are making choices and we are nothing but just a bunch of thoughts every time. And every thought is associated with a particular, like this thought, you will be taking decision on some knowledge. With this knowledge might be false and which might be true. And that only true knowledge is the authentic scriptural knowledge. And if we associate, like, because all the uh, beliefs are created based upon the thoughts we pondered over, and our beliefs are created by logics. So logics are driven by the knowledge, and the only true scriptural knowledge will imbibe all the needed value, like to imbibe like all every like our everyday action, everything, our lifestyle just becomes like to attain the God realization in the shortest possible time. I mean, very technical, it's very good because Swamiji said that all our beliefs creates our values, sustained values, and our sustained values manifest our world around us, because manifesting takes, like, we are taking the decision and then the world manifests, like, right?
True.
So we are making our life. So if this be only, let's say, our every action will create a certain parallel realities, right? Every second, let's say some critical decision will change, like you will be seeing its impacts,
Tanmay,
and
you have to
some
be
people.
real quick in posing that because we have limited
So,
time.
so
Give
I think
capital.
the today's topic was that gods is, like, every action are is driven by God. Like, instead, like, we are given the free will. So, like, it's a long thing, but I'm just saying that our beliefs, if totally are based upon the knowledge, scriptural knowledge, authentic knowledge, rather than false knowledge,
True.
then
We are
parallel
aligned.
realities will create.
I think you made the point. Very true. God is the doer when we are completely surrendered, right? Like Tulsidas ji had said, "Na main kari, na kari sakun, sahib karta mor, karat karawat aap hain, tulsi tulsi shor." If saint says that, it makes sense because they are perfectly surrendered. Until we have perfected that, the way to look at it is, if something good gets done, it's God's inspiration. He's the doer. He inspired me. If something bad, we have to take responsibility. Window mirror, we have spoken about it. But thank you, Tanmay. Nevertheless, let's move on to our next segment. We'll take 3 hands today and wrap it up, because we are today going to introduce Bhakti Shatak, which is like Maharajji's. It is like something which is phenomenal. Okay, it's an ocean of knowledge, where it's an ocean of Brajras, where the swans congregate. That is essentially, it's a Man Sarovar of Brajras. So it is our privilege to be introducing it to our sessions as part of our devotional segment. So today we'll start with that. We'll take 3 hands. Sandhya, you propose that, so you will do the honors to get started with. So we'll take 3 hands, and if you are interested, please put in your name. We'll take it and we'll rotate people so that everybody gets an opportunity. So let's get started with that. And I'll do a quick commentary towards the end for that. Yes, let's take 3 hands. Go ahead, Sandhya.
Radhe Radhe. Okay, I'll get started. ब्रज रस मान सरोवर भक्ति शतक यह मोर राधे राधे पाठक जन बनी हंस जनो बिहरहु प्रेम विभोर राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for proposing to introduce this as our next segment. I'm really looking forward to this series. Shri Ramya next, and then we'll take Pallaviji 3 hands today. Riyaji for tomorrow.
Yes. Thank you, Sandhya ji. Sri Ramya ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Shri Ramya.
Radhe Radhe. ब्रज रस मान सरोवर भक्ति शतक यह मोर राधे राधे पाठक जन बनी हम सजनों बिहरहु प्रेम विभोर राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे थैंक यू
Thank you, Shri Ramya. Very nice. Pallavi ji, please do the honors for us.
Yeah, राधे राधे। ब्रज रस मान सरोवर भक्ति शतक यह मोर राधे राधे पाठक जन बनी हंस जनु विरहु प्रेम विभोर राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे
Very nice. Thank you, Pallavi ji. Okay, we can go till 10:05. So I think we have done really good job today. Yes, Riya ji, maybe last hand, and if I get it, I can recite as well. Real quick, Riya ji, please go ahead.
रिया जी राधे राधे प्लीज गो
राधे राधे ब्रज रस मान सरोवर भक्ति शतक यह मोर राधे राधे पातक जन बनी हंस जनु बिहरहु प्रेम विभोर राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे Thank you, Radhe
Riya
Radhe.
ji. Radhe, so I can do the honors as well. We have 3 more minutes.
यस प्लीज यस
ब्रज रस मान सरोवर भक्ति शतक यह मोर राधे राधे पाठक जन बनी हंस जनु बिहरहु प्रेम विभोर राधे राधे जय राधे कृष्ण राधे 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 कृष्ण राधे. So it's our honor, privilege, and extreme fortune to introduce this series, which we will continue to build upon as we go along. And this book, my Bhakti Shatak, like Maharaj Ji in his own words, is a veritable divine lake filled with the nectarine divine love bliss of Shri Krishna. The fortunate readers, which is us, are invited to be like swans at the lake and relish this sweet nectar. So thank you again, everybody, for your wonderful participation and another engaging session. And thank you, Cash, for your outstanding presentation. I can see a lot of accolades flowing in even now. Thank you for the graceful presentation by Cash on the topic of grace. I think a lot of grace flowing in there. So thanks again. Please fill out the feedback tracker. Tomorrow's segment is going to be the first one in its series of the case studies that we'll discuss, taking some practical scenarios and see how we can take inspiration from our scriptures to tackle those scenarios, situations that can arise in life. But again, a very
will there be no Kahoot game tomorrow?
No Kahoot tomorrow. We'll take a bit of a break from Kahoot and see this segment, how that unfolds. Okay. I think it's going to be, it can morph
Looking
into,
forward to that. Yes.
morph into something interesting. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So we'll talk about it and talk about scenarios as well. So thank you again. Please fill out the feedback tracker if not already. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. So Radhe Radhe, good night, good day from my side. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nitin ji. Thank you,
Thank you.
Kash ji. Thank you, everyone, for such a wonderful participation. Stay blessed. See you tomorrow. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.